Hi, and welcome to Joining Us, celebrating 50 years of Bands of America. My name is Chuck Henson, and for 35 of those 50 years, I was the primary public address announcer for Bands of America's series of regional and the Grand National Marching Band Championships. Now, over the course of the next 25 episodes, I'm going to do my very best to bring you the people and stories that ultimately have created the excellence that is BOA.
I just was fascinated by this man's marketing ability and the idea that he was putting together a national organization.
Well, one was having hamburgers directly across the table from Dr. Rebelli. So I'm literally watching him eat a hamburger thinking, that's William D. Rebelli having a hamburger in front of me.
Back when Marching Bands of America began in 1975, I and my high school marching band were one of the first to participate.
10 years after the experience, I'm still hearing from kids who thought that was one of the coolest things they ever got to do.
I mean, when you went joining us, those kids went nuts right then. You could have read out of a phone book from that point on. You had them.
They're just going to blow the roof off the place. Like, I get chills thinking about it.
The rifles would spin rifles, then they would catch them and they would fall on the ground at the end of the tune.
Like a death drop.
Yeah.
What's in your blood? If you cut my arm, I'll bleed Bands of America, music for all.
What Marching Bands of America started was innovative, so new, so exciting.
50 years, a half century? Are you kidding me?
Happy 50th anniversary to Bands of America.
So get your program, find a great seat here in our virtual stadium, and get ready to learn everything you ever wanted to know about Bands of America. Joining us from Bellbrook, Ohio. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Joining Us, 50 years of Bands of America Excellence. My name is Chuck Henson, and today we're going to judge you. Yeah, that's happening. Today, I have with me Richard Saucedo, I have Nola Jones, and John Phillips here, all key members of the Bands of America adjudication panel. Hi, guys.
Hello, Chuck.
Hi, Chuck.
Hey, it's great to see you, Chuck.
Look, I was really hoping you all would talk at the same time and just talk all over each other. But you're so orderly.
That only happens in the judging booth, Chuck.
That's
right.
Yeah. John, I can't tell you the number of times. Well, we've had a very cramped booth, and me and the judges are kind of right up on top of each other. And when I listen to what you guys do all day long, it is such a task. Richard, let me start with you. So what you're tasked with doing, what we do is we obviously want to make all the band programs better. We're in this for the kids. We're in this for the educational aspect. We're not here to knock anybody, tear them down. When I hear you guys speak, the individual information you give to these bands, there's no cookie cutter speeches in these that I hear. Is that pretty accurate?
I think it is. It's certainly what we try not to do is cookie cutter type stuff.
I mean, other than the beginning, hi, I'm, welcome to the show,
Exactly.
that sort of thing.
Right. The formality stuff.
Yeah.
But I think you're exactly right. One of the things that we're about, when you look at competition, most people think about where did a group finish, right? Or where did a group not finish? Who won? Who didn't? We look at it totally differently at Bands of America. I know my colleagues would agree with me. We're in the process of helping groups to get better. And we mean that on all levels, the director, the staff level, the student level. And so it's not about just getting bands in the right place. It's about giving bands information that they can take back with them. And so the next time they perform, maybe it's at a football game, right? Maybe it's not even at a competition. We want their principal to notice a difference. We want their audience to notice a difference. We want their school board to notice a difference, the community. And so we're in this to help all those folks, all parts, all the stakeholders in those band programs to improve and to have a better experience. And so the more information that we can give them that they can take home and actually implement immediately, that's kind of what our job is. And you're right, Chuck, it does get tough at times because we want to make sure we're doing the right things, saying the right things, and saying things in a manner that's going to be realistic for the groups.
And I would think, especially if you're looking at a sheet and you're trying to work within those boxes and it's Grand Nationals and you've got 52 bands that are all going to fall within that middle stretch.
Yep.
That's when the real hard work starts. I mean, Nola, I've seen you sweating it out a lot in those booths, going, okay, I'm out of numbers. Can someone help me here?
Yeah, I think John calls it shaving hairs when we get to that level. And realistically, it is that because all the bands by that time, they're really, really good. And they all have things that they do better than most of the other bands. And they have things that they work to maybe are deltas for them and places for improvement. So it's a really interesting conundrum. And you just feel so compelled to do your very best job for every single band. And it's a stamina thing. My first BOA Nationals judging assignment, Gary Markham, thank you,
Yeah.
was on the field for prelims for Grand Nationals back when you didn't have split panels, and we did a full day,
Wow.
50 bands on the field for individual. And I've never had so much fun. I didn't think I was going to go to sleep because it was the most invigorating thing being down there with the kids.
Oh,
It was it's amazing. You never get tired of that.
Yeah.
You never get tired of the energy they bring.
And I can relate on every level to that, because you would think the repetitive nature of what we do in the PA booth is the same thing. It's a stock announcement. We fill in the pieces that are different, but I feel like I'm a part of every single show. And if they're going to give me their best, I'm going to give them my best as well. And I hear the same coming from you.
It feeds. It's a cycle, and we feed off the kids and they feed off the judges, and it's this never-ending cycle. But don't get any ideas, Richard. That was a long time ago when I was on the field for prelims for 60 bands.
I was just redoing the assignments for the end of the year.
Yeah, don't even think about it.
Now, all of you have been chief judge at an event. John, are you the chief judge, or Richard, are you the chief? Who's the top of the chiefs?
We're all really the chiefs.
Richard's our team leader.
Okay.
And all three of us serve on the chief judge's team.
Yeah.
It's taken three of us to replace the person that Nola referred to a minute ago.
With Gary
Markham. And he served for decades as a senior education consultant and chief judge for Bands of America. Gary really was irreplaceable. But what we learned from him, we took and we stand on his shoulders, and we've kind of massaged it a little bit and use more of the modern technology now that's available. We use a different mode of communication that he didn't have when he started out. So it's been really exciting to be part of this team, because I did serve as chief judge in another marching area, which we are familiar with in the summer.
With DCI, sure.
Yeah. So it's been great to collaborate with Nola and Richard. And I can honestly say, and I'm not just trying to massage Richard's ego here, there's never been anybody that has been a better leader to collaborate with. I mean, he is so inclusive, and it's just such a team effort. So I really appreciate working alongside these two.
Chuck, you can see why I love working with these two individuals. They're just amazing, amazing people. And I could not do this without them.
Listen, I know, and every conversation I've had, and we're about halfway through this series, the underlying theme is you surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, right? All ships rise when the tide comes in. And when you find an organization like this one, that everyone is at that same level, it makes everything so much better for everyone. It's great. Richard, coming into this as a band director, and you write music and do a lot of shows as well, but you've seen this organization from a lot of different facets. How did you first get attached? Was it through Carmel, or was there something before that?
It was through Carmel, and it was actually Cam Stasa that called me and said, hey, enough of the state fair stuff. It's time for you to bring the band to BOA. So we started doing that and failed miserably.
Really?
Yeah, oh my gosh. And this is what I tell directors when they get frustrated. It's like, I've been there. And they're like, no, you haven't. Like, yes, I have.
Yeah.
I still remember Cincinnati Regional, where we didn't make finals. And I went home on the bus and didn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't let anyone talk to me, and it was still, I think to this day, one of the most depressing days of my life.
Oh, wow.
But I'm sitting here getting ready to work with all these great people because of the great people at Bands of America that taught me how to get better. And I could name numerous judges, but I would start with Gary Markham.
Yeah.
Who just looked at me and said, Richard, why are you doing that? Come on, try to get it together. And immediately when these folks started helping and I started believing in them and listening, we got better. And that's what I tell directors too. Just trust us. It's not about where you place. It's about getting better. But yeah, that's how I started.
How big was the band at Carmel when you walked in the door?
I think we were maybe around 150, which is
still big.
It's still big, small for Carmel, but most people would love to have a band, that size.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Carmel is like 8,000.
Is the high school that big? Wow.
They have over 5,000 in the high school. Yeah. And they refuse to divide the high school. So it's going to stay that way. So anyway, that's kind of how we started. And my colleagues who have taken over have taken it to a whole new level, and I couldn't be more proud.
How do you describe the atmosphere inside some of those, like when you were a director and let's say you make finals and you go to that finalist directors meeting, describe the atmosphere inside those rooms.
Is this before or after you throw up?
Before finals.
Okay. Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. It really is. And I try to remember that now as a chief judge when I go into any of those directors meetings, because you're You're about your kids. You don't want your kids to think that they could be any place better than where they are.
That's true.
And so you want to make sure you're doing the best that you can for them. But then the other great thing is you see all these other directors in the room that are stressing just as much as you are. And they put in the same amount of work and they care just as much as you do. And it's easy to become fast friends with all those folks. So it's a wonderful community. But yeah, it's nerve-wracking for sure.
Yeah, I see a lot of family's the word that comes into my head, but those sort of relationships that are created over time. Oh my goodness, your band was fantastic. Congratulations. Do great tonight. That cooperative atmosphere is, I think, what drives a lot of the events and why Bands of America and the sort of white glove treatment we give everyone makes the organization separate above what you would find anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what you guys do with the judging community is really the icing on top of that, because without that, no one would come to the shows. Why come?
I have a funny story about Richard Saucedo.
Oh, no.
One year when he was with Carmel, going into finals on Saturday night, I went down into the tunnel. I got permission. I'd completed all my judging assignments. And I just wanted to see what the experience, that white glove experience that you talk about, and see the collaboration with the directors and see how this really works down there. I had brought my bands, but I had never been able to sit and watch all 12 finalists. And they were also interesting how every band did things differently. But Richard, the reason I think his bands historically did so well was because of his commitment to fundamentals. He didn't do anything any different fundamentally 5 minutes before a Grand National Finals performance than he did back in May. And the kids were in an arc, circled up. Richard is on a ladder, and they're playing Concert F. And literally, it's 3 minutes until they're going on the field for their final performance of whatever year that was. What I kept thinking was, what is that horrible smell? And Richard had his ladder backed up next to a dumpster. And I swear something died in it 4 days earlier. And the kids were doing their breathing and they were creating Concert F, and they were focused and so professional. And Richard was not deviating not one port from what he'd been doing all year long. And it's that consistency. But yeah, and he does everything. When he's chief judge, he's just as methodical and just as committed.
That's awesome. As a director, what bands did you bring?
Well, when I first started teaching, we were in Mississippi, and we took the little Clinton High School band out to the Houston Regional just to get them out of the state of Mississippi and let them see all those bands. We were 12th in finals, and we were stunned. I mean, we just were stunned that we even got in finals because we didn't think that was even possible. And then the Pearl High School band, which you may remember from back in the 80s, I taught there for a while.
Sure. Oh my God, beautiful band.
And then I moved to Tennessee, McGavock. So yeah, it's been a litany of over the years. I've been in this a long time.
There's some not too shoddy programs on that list.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have a funny Pearl story for you, Nola. The first band I brought to Grand Nationals was George Rogers Clark from Kentucky. I was doing the visual program and the guard for them. And Pearl, in the old RCA Dome, on the back sideline, there was some windows. You could see through the airlock. Remember those tiny little windows when you came in from the outside? And Pearl was on the field, and they were in their closer and had these just gorgeous iridescent flags that were just everywhere. It seemed like everywhere. And I looked at the band director we had and I go, oh, what have we got ourselves into? These people are so great. And we ended up, speaking of Richard not making finals, we were 38th that year. And GRC had some amazing, we had just won the state championship the year before. But that's what makes that Grand National show so fantastic. That soup of bands that come from everywhere that, may very well have won their state championship and, come to the big show where there's bands that are going to be better than them and learn from it.
That's the whole point, is get off the porch.
Yeah.
Be with the best bands anywhere so that you can see and improve. To be clear, David and Sue Nicholson built that Pearl program, and they brought that band. The band you're talking about, I'm sure, was one of David and Sue's early programs there.
Yeah.
And they were just awesome.
It was fantastic.
It's like Richard always says, we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Don't we, though? John, have you brought a band to the show?
Well, I'm the anomaly in all this because I'm actually Canadian, if you didn't know that already. And marching band up there is more, football band, not really in the competitive realm. But I did grow up in the whole drum corps world. And I did teach a marching band. I taught several, kind of the community-based organizations. But the first marching band I ever taught was as an undergrad at the university that I attended. So it was not part of the music department. It wasn't even part of the athletic department. The student council.
It was all extracurricular?
Well, yeah, but the student council ran it. So, on a lark, they put an ad in the local newspaper, and it said marching band director required. So I applied and go for the interview, and they had been doing like Big Ten marching style, like jumping up high and moving the horns back and forth.
What year would this have been?
I'd rather not say. The gentleman doesn't reveal his age. Let's just say it was several decades ago.
I'm going to go with 70s.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And so it was really fascinating because I was familiar with this style, but I had marched in drum corps, so I kind of converted them to corps style. The secret, and this is how I learned my craft of marching teaching, was I never knew from week to week who was going to show up, depending on who was more hungover than the other person, to get to the stadium.
Gotta love college kids, right?
You got it, right. So, I kind of did everything symmetrically and from the middle out. And, if we get to rehearsal that morning or, warm up or whatever, and I just say, hey, everybody move in one slot or two or three or five, whatever. But it was a really fascinating experience. And from that, I started to write music, arrange, and got involved in it. But my portal was primarily through the drum corps realm. And I was fortunate to have some mentors, and Gary was certainly one of them. And thanks to working alongside Gary in the DCI realm, I got invited into the party here at Bands of America. And the rest is history.
And what a great guest you are. That era that you're talking about, and I think we can all relate to this, from the late 70s into the 80s, everything changed about marching band. Everything. The Berlin Wall that had been up between drum corps and marching bands had started to collapse, because we all know the G bugles were loud and out of tune. And, band directors didn't want their kids playing those. But when that metamorphosis started to happen, the band programs just took off. I think of Mary Catholic as a great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing how quickly this activity was able to adapt. And so from a judging perspective, I think back to the very beginning of judging and what those tapes sounded like and what you guys are able to put out today, which of course is very sound and educational based. Richard, let me start with you. The evolution of the activity has certainly changed the way we adjudicate it, right?
Absolutely. And, you're right that Greg at Marian Catholic made such a difference in our activity. Being from Indiana, I would also include Tom Dirks at Center Grove in that. He was another real pioneer that changed the way that marching bands were doing things. And I learned so much from Tom. Unfortunately, we lost him this year, but he was another one. There were a lot of great bands and directors that really changed the face of things. But in terms of adjudication, and I think John and Nola would agree with this, that even tomorrow, when we go to our next site for our next contest, and on Saturday morning when we have our judges meeting, we're going to be talking to them about new things that we need to think about that we weren't thinking about even last weekend, and so we're constantly learning, constantly adapting. And wow, I would actually be a little nervous, Chuck, to go back and listen to some of those tapes from the 70s,
Right?
especially if I made one of them.
Yeah, I've got a few myself that I'd be very embarrassed about.
But yeah, and for Bands of America especially, and it's a reason I'm so proud to be a part of this group, is because it really is educationally based. And we're just trying to do everything to help folks. It's not about knocking people down, telling people what they're doing wrong. It's about telling people how they can get better.
Could you give me an example of one of the new things you'd be talking about this weekend?
Well, one of the new things we'll be talking about is just reminding everyone of how to listen to the whole electronics array of things versus acoustic. And we have to be careful in our activities. Speaking of music education, we have to be careful that even though electronics are here to stay and amplification is here to stay because it's part of the national trend, we still have to make sure we're teaching students. We still have to make sure that our judges are hearing acoustic sounds. And John actually put together a great masterpiece for us. It's in the rule book now that helps, and he made some changes on the sheets that are helping our judges to be aware of that now. And it's nothing against folks if they use electronics, but the main thing is we want it in balance. We want to make sure that their individual players are learning from a music education standpoint. And we're just trying to be very straight up about all of that. So that's one of the things we'll talk about is just making sure they're listening for balance between acoustic and electronic instruments.
John, with this thing you've just written, how did you go about putting that together?
We already had a short paragraph that talked about the use of amplification electronics. And, it was pretty sparse in terms of what it identified. It was more about like what was legal, if you will, So we wanted to create a philosophy that embraced the spirit of music education, as Richard said, and the philosophy of Bands of America, that it is music for all. And so that every student's contribution counts. And so we wrote it in such a way to encourage all of the participants to let every student be part of this through the musical experience and not just have somebody who's got control over a sound patch and beautiful colors. And, it's really quite impressive. I mean, you listen to these pre-shows and you think you're at some 3D cinema experience, right?
Yeah.
And then 14 kids start playing their instruments. Do you realize, okay, well, here's reality. So we wanted to make sure that those students really did get that fundamental experience of training and were going to be showcased for their achievement. And, going back to where we kind of started with when you talked about the good old days, I mean, those days of judging was just going out and finding mistakes,
Yep.
identifying the errors.
It was a tick-driven system back then.
Right. We've come such a long way from that. And then now it's about recognizing and rewarding achievement. And so the more that students are challenged, the more complicated their performance is important, because if they can grow through that, through that experience, learn through that, that's very important. But the number one thing is that they have to produce a really good sound. I mean, you'll see in the manual many times it talks about tone quality and the sonority of the ensemble. And that's where we put the emphasis on acoustics. So it's really a philosophy statement. It's not anything like that can enforce as a rule. But what we found is over the last couple of years, the directors are heeding this, and more they're using judiciously amplification and the miking of soloists and this kind of thing. Now, sometimes it blows up and doesn't always work perfectly.
Right. Live by the chord, die by the chord, right?
That's right.
All right, let's take a moment for a quick break because I want to listen to some of your stories. Now, remember, if you've got a special Music for All or Bands of America memory or story, you can record it and be a part of this very 50th anniversary podcast. Just visit musicforall.org/podcasts to contribute your story.
Hi, my name is Andrew Bukema. I'm the former director of bands of Grant High School in Grant, Michigan. One of my favorite memories was from 2010 when we had our show based off the Eric Whitacre tune, Godzilla Eats Las Vegas, and that was the title of our show. We happened to do quite well and win Class A at that regional, which was one of our very first regional championships. And our kids were just absolutely elated to be able to perform at night. But one of the most favorite memories was at finals retreat, and we were placed next to Mason High School out of Ohio, and their staff came over to our kids and celebrated with them as they found out that was our first regional that we had won. But the staff continued to take pictures with our Godzilla and Elvis characters that we had during the show, and just had the most amazing experience and just felt so accepted. So when Bands of America said this is a positively life-changing organization, that was absolutely true that evening. And our kids still talk about that show and the experience that we had consistently. So now, as I've moved on to school administration, I have the opportunity of being a Bands of America adjudicator and just love the growth, not only with the Bands of America community, but with the directors and staff, and allowing the experiences that I've had and passing that along to other directors and students. Bands of America is a fantastic organization, and I'm glad to continue to be a part of it.
Now, let's rejoin our conversation. I know in the beginning, sampling was the big thing that folks talked about, and whoever wants to address this can, but what is the rule on sampling? Let's say I've got a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speech I want to put in my program. Is there a time limit on that? I know a kid has to generate it in real time, right?
They just can't use samples like they can't sample in the Berlin fill for the horn feature or whatever. They can use voiceover samples, and there's no time limit.
Okay.
We don't time with the stopwatch. There are timing and penalty people who do that. So yeah, our judges are judging cumulatively. We're judging through time, and we evaluate through time. And so if the sample fits in with the concept and elevates the concept, then it's really important. And sometimes they're more successful. A lot of judges will give information about, the verbiage here. If it's really important to you, then you need to work on the fidelity of the spoken word here, or work on the balance of what's going on with that, because that can affect music and visual success. The things about Bands of America that I personally, and I think I could speak for John and Richard and actually every single judge, we're student driven. We're very student driven. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter how great the show design is. But at the end of the day, if the students elevate that, they're going to get the real credit. And we just want every student to be successful, and we want them to be set up for success.
It's been such a crazy evolution to watch the electronics come into our activity and now become so prevalent in it. I was just at DCI in August for the first time in many years. And wow, John, wow, amazing those programs. But I think that the band kids are still setting the standard for what DCI is going to do. What do you think about that, John?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of crossover. There's no right or wrong to it.
Yeah.
I think the crossover is in the design personnel. We have a lot of people that migrate between the summer activities and the fall and even on into the winter activities. And you see the indoor winds and percussion and guard. So I think that's one of the reasons, who's leading the charge on all of this. And it comes down to the resources. These are all just my personal opinions now. I'm speaking on behalf of Bands of America, but I do think that the direction that DCI has gone, they used to be the leader and the corps would come out with a certain uniform or a certain kind of approach to designing the field show. And guess what? The bands would imitate that.
Yeah.
But now you're right, Chuck. I think some of it goes the other way, but mostly because of the design teams and the instructional staff.
It's also less restrictive, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like going to this big entertainment. You have the greatest stage there, this huge stage, and people are filling it. What's really cool to see is when a smaller group goes out and does something really spectacular. Yeah. And we're seeing more and more of that. And you know why? Because great teaching. And why is it great teaching? Because they're getting great information when they come to a BOA event from the judges. We do these clinics on the day after the contest. And all of that informs those people, the participants. And I mean, all three of us have been, you'll see a group one year. The next year you'll go, wow, did they ever get better?
Yeah.
And why is that? Because it's the same staff. They matured and they benefited from their experience with us.
You become like the people you associate with, plain and simple. Let's talk about how we find judges. Richard, where does that pool come out of? And how do you even begin to identify someone that could have the qualifications to do what you guys do?
Well, Chuck, we've been talking a little bit about Gary Markham, our mentor. And one of the things that I think Gary did that changed the judging scene in our activity is he thought it was important to start bringing in people that were actually involved in the activity, people that were teaching, directors, guard designers, choreographers, drill writers, arrangers, and composers. He wanted to start bringing in people that were involved. Now, when that happened, we had to be a little bit careful of affiliations. So someone couldn't go to a contest or competition where they would possibly judge a band that they'd been working with. But we tried our best to work around that and for the most part been very successful. But I think that's one of the best things Gary did. And we're continuing to try to do that. And we have a way that folks can now apply. And I'm going to let John talk about that a little bit because he was wonderful at setting that up for us.
Nice.
Yeah, we created an online portal where judges, and this information's on the Music for All website. So if anybody thinks they have the stuff and they want to give it a shot, you can go to the website and it explains what the criteria is that you would need to meet to be on the roster. And it allows you to upload some information. I'll tell you basic things like letter of application, couple of reference letters, statement of your experience judging. And then we do ask Chuck for a few examples of their commentary because, more important than the score is the commentary.
That's right. That's what's going home with them.
That's going home with them. That's going to inform their next steps for their teaching and for, maybe some design changes and those kinds of things. So we want to hear that the judge actually has some experience. We don't train people right from the ground up, and it would be great if we had the resources to do that. I think Music for All has enough on their plate with all the other initiatives, and maybe someday we will.
To add a judging academy, yeah.
Yeah. But we do collaborate with other organizations, and someday maybe we'll have this massive judge training portal that we can work through. But that's a big part of it, is that they submit all of this documentation. And once you're on the roster, you're not just sort of set. You don't just go ahead and judge. Judges all go through a rigorous training program, and we're using like an online course that they have to take.
Wow.
And they go through this. It's hours of work, actually, to sit through the training modules. And that's been something that we've evolved. That's one of the newer things that we've brought in.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we kind of took the best of what Gary did in terms of finding these great people and then knowing that they have some experience. And then we kind of, lead them toward all of the material that they'll need to be successful as a judge and to inform the participants in the best way they can.
Do one of you guys get those submissions when those come in? Does it go to one person?
It comes to all three of us.
Okay.
I've been quarterbacking it and reaching out to Nola, like just in terms of the logistics of it. So it'll come in and then I'll pass it over to them and say, okay, I think this is worth looking at. In some cases, we've had to go back to people and say, you might need some more experience, but we haven't turned anybody down cold. We just say,
okay,
here's where you can grow, just like we would do with the kids, right? So we want to be educating that way.
But also during the summer, during Bands of America summer camp, during our Directors Academy that's sponsored by Sweetwater and presented by Yamaha, John has been doing a judge training intensive. And Carolina Crown comes in and is in session during the week. And we take them to a visual judging session and a music judging session. And then last year they got to make recordings in competition suite the same way that our judges would and gave them some feedback. So if someone who has an interest in judging would like to come be with us at the summer camp, that's a really good place to grow those skills. And I think we're going to probably keep that, or at least at some level. And so that's a really good way, even if they're not interested in Bands of America, just locally even.
That's a great point.
And it also, I only got into judging to be a better band director. I never thought I'd judge anything, Chuck, ever.
Same here.
Really? That's good. Just by listening and watching other bands, you've been able to make your bands better, I'm assuming.
Yeah, knowing the system.
Yeah. Nola, let me ask you this. I think there are between 25 and 30 regionals, super regionals, grand nationals this year. How do you guys as a team maintain consistency of numbers, that numbers in Texas can relate to numbers in Ohio on the same weekend?
It's training on the system, Chuck. There it is. That sheet right there that Gary and the advisory committee put together all those years ago. And John has led the charge on editing that so it would evolve as the bands evolve. And then making sure that the judges adhere to that. And they do. It's scary. Like, they're always so nervous about the numbers. When you go in, you're more terrified of the numbers as a judge. You don't want to tank a band and you don't want to single-handedly have them win the contest because of your number. But we also know bands have strengths and deltas. And so they're always worried about it. And we monitor those numbers. We look at them, but we never ask anybody to change anything. But it's like just the reassurance. Y'all are scary. You're all within the same box, the same third of the box. Like these people are pros, man.
That's awesome.
And we have some anomalies now and again. But most of the time when there's an anomaly, it's because the band has an anomaly. They're really good in one area and maybe not great in another one.
Richard, do you find yourself making phone calls to all the other shows throughout the day just to check in and see how they're doing? Doesn't each event have its own chief judge, right?
Each event has its own chief judge. And what we do is, and I just did this last night, Chuck, I send out a huge document. We're trying to make it smaller. A huge document to all our chief judges, which explains to them their role during the weekend from the time the judges arrive on Friday evening until they finish clinics on Sunday. And so it has a lot of information about what they are supposed to talk to their judges about in the before prelims meeting, everything from how they're going to handle dinner, all of this. But we have the best of the best out there. For example, in Arizona, we had tremendous weather problems.
Oh.
And folks would say, well, wait a minute, isn't that an indoor arena? Well, yes, it is. But they still warm up outside. So
the first year I did that show, and I'm sure this is what happened. I wasn't there, but the lightning is everywhere.
Yes,
the kids can't be in the parking lot, so they have to come inside the building.
Exactly.
While finals is going on.
Right.
And where do you put them? In the end zones, in the stands. Yeah.
Yep. They ended up not being able to do finals. They spread out prelims throughout the entire day.
Wow.
And we had a wonderful colleague of ours, John Gomez, who used to teach in Arizona, who was a great chief judge and just took it all in stride and said, here's what we're going to do, worked with the contest directors. And so John and Nola and I have 100% faith in the people that we put out there. And we do check in with them, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not something we worry about.
You guys collectively have been attached to this organization for a very long time. 50 years of organization. Richard, I know you've got probably at least 25 to 30 of those, right? Same with Nola. John, I'm uncertain of your tenure within Bands of America, but this is a huge part of all of our lives. And I want to just ask each of you individually, and we can start, Nola, with you, if that's okay, about what you personally get from your association with Bands of America. I know for me, I can answer the question easily, and the answer is everything. Dr. Tim said, you cut me, I'll bleed Bands of America. It's something for me that transcends a social club. It transcends a competition. It becomes family for me. When I see you guys out and about, that's the only time I get to see you all. It's in the fall, right? And it's always so great to just, handshake or a hug and how you doing, a quick check-in and let everybody do the thing. But it feels like family to me.
What 100% is, Chuck. I mean, it's a litany of things how Bands of America has affected my life personally. My parents were both band directors, and they took us to Summer Nationals in Whitewater all those years ago. And that's when I saw the first marching band. Kosciuszko, Mississippi just lit us up. And I remember watching Sylvia Webster with Bob Buckner's band that he talked about. From that first day, I was hooked. Came to camp, did all the things, brought our band with the first started teaching. How soon do we have a band that we can go? The answer is immediately. Don't wait till you're ready to go to Bands of America. Get in there, because those are the bands that are going to show the most growth. And then through the years, moving over to the judging, and now my best friends in the world, like Richard and John. I can't imagine my life without those people. And we, Gary.
Well, I know you and Ken traveled extensively, Ken Giese.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, let me point that question at you then. Growing up where you grew up and the activity of what it was there, coming here and being part of this wave of revolution and your role in it, that's got to be an incredible sense of accomplishment.
It's overwhelming, actually. And the way you just framed that, it's true. I mean, I remember I just happened to be, I should buy more lottery tickets because I happen to be in the right place at the right time and just have the right person have belief in me,
Yeah.
It was more kind of like throw them into the pool and see if they can swim here. But I got invited to do my first BOA event, and it was in San Antonio. And I thought that was kind of cool. I thought I'll go check the Alamo Dome. And I was assigned to the finals. And I'm not sure how many of our listeners are familiar with the bands in Texas, but when you go to the super regional,
the super regional is crazy.
The first band comes out. And my eyes were like this big. And I'm going, okay, what score am I going to start with here? Right?
That was your first judging assignment?
Yeah.
Was San Antonio finals.
Yeah.
Nice. That is baptism by fire, my friend.
That was it.
Yeah.
And then, over the years, things happened and I got lucky. I got invited to the very first camp that they had at Ball State. So when they moved from the other one, so I've been at Ball State ever since the camp started there. And another time I was happened to be at one of these DCI winter meetings with Gary Markham, and he said, hey, somebody's not able to be at our concert festival next week or next month. It was just weeks away. So would you happen to be available to come in and be part of that? So it was all just kind of being in the right place at the right time. I assume that I didn't mess up too badly with any of those, and I've continued to be invited back. And like Richard said, he's proud to be associated with this. And I think we all three of us are proud. And a little humble because this is so big, whether you're with a national champion group or not, just to be affiliated with something at this level and week in and week out to see how dedicated the people are that are teaching these kids and how hard the kids are working. That's the performing side.
Yeah.
There's all the behind the scenes sides too. Like I can't even imagine how they make these things run, get the buses in, move all of the pieces around. It's truly amazing. And it's just an incredible organization. And just by being part of it, I just feel so humbled.
Bob Morrison said to me when I talked to him that Music for All as an organization is now by far the largest arts education and advocacy organization in the country. By far, he said. To know that 40 years ago, there were 7 of us on staff and we had an Econoline van pulling a trailer to do the, 7 regionals and a 2-day Grand Nationals. To see what it's come forward to do, it's mind-numbing. And, Richard, as someone who's been a director and who's been an adjudicator and a teacher and board members, you've seen generations of kids impacted positively by this.
Absolutely. You can't describe it. Like John said, it's totally overwhelming. And actually, Chuck, it's hard to talk about it without getting a little bit emotional because you remember the teaching side. And then I think about it on the judging side, what teachers are going through. And now our job is to help them, right? To try to get back and make things better for them and for their students and for their communities. So it really is a full circle thing. And for me, it's my opportunity, I think, to give back to Bands of America when they were so good to me when I was at Carmel. And they taught all of us so much, all my staff members at Carmel. They taught us so much and my kids so much. Nola and John constantly judged my band. And when they told us we were good, I was celebrating. When they told us we had issues, I would go to therapy, but you just constantly learn.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this, man. We're just learning all the time. And even this weekend, we're going to learn again. And I love all of this.
That's amazing. I want to kind of hit on 2 other quick topics. One is kind of bloopers and blunders. Now, I don't know if you guys all had a chance to listen to the episode with myself and Dan and John and Rich Fraser, but we actually just unloaded several of our really awful moments on a microphone. for all the world to hear. I mean, it was so cathartic. It was fantastic. Are there moments so far in your judging careers that you're like, oh, Lord, was I even at that show? I mean, anything like that comes to mind where you're like, that was not good?
Okay, I'll start.
Confess.
So we're doing a big show in Atlanta, and I'm thinking at that time, we used to always have time to take the judges to dinner between prelims and finals.
I was always jealous of that, by the way. Always jealous of it.
Well, I knew of this great restaurant. I did all the mapping out and the GPS stuff, and I'm like, yeah, we can get back in plenty of time. But what I didn't realize is there was a huge NBA basketball game going on, or I think maybe it was a college game actually, going on right next to the stadium.
Phillips Arena sits right next to it.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And so we have our 2 cars. We're pulling up. I see all these flashing lights, all these cops everywhere. And so we pull up there and they're like, sir, you can't get into this area. Sorry. And I said, well, we're judges at this competition. And he looked at me and said, I really don't care who you are. I said, well, wait a minute. There are thousands of people in there waiting on us. And he goes, sorry about you.
Wow.
And I just looked at the rest of my team. I'm like, what are we going to do? And they go, we're just going to walk. So they just got out. So the 2 of us drivers, we stayed in the car. The rest of the judges got out and started walking. We had to go find a place to park.
Oh my God.
We literally all got up into the stadium like 2 minutes before the first band went on. And I walk up to the press box with the team, and the whole BOA crew is sitting there like this with our arms folded like, what did you just do?
Yeah. Please start the show now. Yeah,
so I will never forget about that.
You know, and for something like that, that puts so much pressure on me because now I have to stall for everybody.
Right.
You know, and how many times do you want to hear the buy a program book announcement? Really? How many times do you want to hear that? Not many, I'll tell you. Nola, what do you got?
Well, this one involves Ken Geezy, our friend that we lost last year. You know, in the old days, you had a recorder. You had a cassette recorder and it had a tape in it. And if something stupid came flying out of your mouth, you could just rewind just a little zoom, zoom, and it would just rewind that stupid thing off of there. And then you could just hit record again and you were good to go. Well, you can't do that anymore.
It's all digital, right?
And this was one of those days that we had judged, I don't know, 50 bands in prelims or whatever. It was before we had the split panels. And by 5 o'clock, we were just drooling on ourselves and trying to be relevant and there was this little band. And I was trying to say, I know you know why you're doing this, and you're going to want to continue to develop that idea and make the intent more clear. What came flying out of my mouth was, I know you know why you're doing this, but for the life of me, I don't. And I saw Ken wheel around and look at me. His head was on a whiplash. And then I realized what I had just said. And then I don't know the word that came flying out of my mouth after that. And then I pushed rewind.
All recorded. Yeah.
Enough. Yeah, all recorded. But that was when you had the cassette recorder and you could rewind. Yeah. I'm sure there've been many party tapes that were much worse than that. But I got busted on that one and I totally deserved it. And thank God for Ken catching me and looking at me because I just rewound it and went on. We've got tons of stories. How long could this podcast be? We've got hundreds. The time I got locked in a bathroom.
No, I'm telling you, we went very long telling all of ours. There was a band show years and years ago. Angels in the Architecture was the program that the band was doing. And sometimes when you open your mouth, something comes out that's not what was in your brain. And I said angles instead of angels. Had a little dyslexic moment. And the judges for that show at the lunch were going, I didn't see a single angle in that show at all. I'm like, oh, Lord, I've just ruined this band's program. I've ruined their program. John, anything like that when you're on your list?
Well, Nola didn't get to finish her anecdote about getting locked in the bathroom. I don't know if she wants to.
There we go.
How many bands did you miss while you were in there, Nola?
Well, I might have come running out of the bathroom saying, good afternoon.
Where was this?
I can't tell you. But it was in the San Antonio Dome. There's a bathroom down in the corner, right coming out of the tunnel on the right. And if you time it just right between bands, you can get in and out of there, but you have to take your recorder with you because sometimes you're given the introduction as you're coming through the end zone. So we'll just leave it there at hypothetical.
Little do people know that you might be indisposed while you're starting that.
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Most of mine are probably what the announcers go through is mispronouncing the name of the group. And, being Canadian sometimes, because we have this kind of Frenchness to it. I can't remember specific ones, to be honest, but I know more than once I've mispronounced a group. And then if I ever talk to the director again, he'll say, you called us such and such. It's really pronounced this way. I'm not going to tell the entire story. So Nola, you can relax. And Richard, I don't think you were the chief judge. Gary Markham was. But again, I'll go back to San Antonio. And we were in a prelims. It was a long prelims. And, there was a break. And between the bands, we were switching groups or something. And between groups, myself and another judge who happened to be Canadian, we were reflecting on our youthful days as marching in drum corps and judging in drum corps up in Quebec. And we'd talk about the different groups. They had all kinds of interesting names, and you'd have a sheet and it would have like the name on the group, the Defenders and this one and that one. And then it would be like Finn would be like the end, And so we had a colleague who was talking about in the drum corps judging, saying, well, this group's not here, and they say, well, yeah, that's the end. That's what Finn means, right? Or whatever le petit déjeuner. Well, that was the breakfast, that kind of thing.
Got it.
So we got talking about a couple of other things. And then I said, to this judge, you remember like they had all these strange names. And I put an idea in his head, a word in his head, which he in turn used when the next band came up, but he didn't really mean to use that word. So the faux pas wasn't really on me. It was on, transcendentally, I had transferred this thought to that individual who then had to retract, of course, because as Nola said, we couldn't rewind the tape and he didn't realize he'd said it. And then poor Gary had to address it with the director.
And was it an obscene word?
It was not obscene.
Good.
It wasn't offensive to most people.
But to some.
But I think it was a body part or something like that.
Oh, God.
So anyway, and again, not an offensive one. So this is a youth activity. But that kind of stuff happens. I mean, as you're sitting there with 30, 40 groups, and all three of us, when we are chief judge, we're very constantly monitoring the panel because you have to be on your A game all the time. That's what the participants expect.
That's right.
Our brains sometimes blow a gasket and, the incorrect word comes out. But I think the spirit of what the whole activity is about, the director took it in good stead and didn't overreact to it. And that all we can do is apologize for stepping in it, In life, we're all going to step in it.
Yes.
Recovery is everything.
There's a t-shirt design there somewhere. Do you guys ever get nervous when a band comes out?
Oh, God.
Like there's pressure on you. It's Grand National Finals and band number 9 walks out and they could make a big move or not. I mean, you've got to feel that pressure, right?
Absolutely. I think the thing that scares me the most, Chuck, is if someone does something, especially musically, that I don't understand. And then I feel dumb.
Oh.
And then eventually I'll figure out what they did or I'll go talk to them or whatever. I remember doing that with a couple of directors. That's really my only fear is that they'll do something really cool, especially like harmonically or something like that. And I won't be able to figure out what they did and compliment them on them in the right way. If I say something like, oh, I think that was really cool, they immediately know, he doesn't understand what we just did.
You're speaking in coded language. I got it.
That's the thing that makes me a little nervous.
What we're doing here today, this podcast, this oral history of 50 years of Bands of America will be, in the archives forever. And I've asked everyone the same question as we sort of wrap things up. And that is, what do you want to see for the future of the organization that has meant so much to all of us?
Yeah, I think the reason that the organization continues to thrive, you mentioned the number of regionals they're holding, that's increased substantially, and all of the other programs. The reason that happens is because of the commitment to excellence on both sides, the performers and on those who administrate and oversee and evaluate. So that's the key thing, is to maintain that standard. Nola uses the expression often, it's the gold standard. I think it's the platinum or beyond, standard is what we are.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I hope that it will continue to thrive and prosper and perpetuate those standards. Because for every student who has the experience in any one of the programs that Music for All and Bands of America offers, they come away a better person. Everybody on this podcast and all your other ones knows the value of that.
That's right.
The mission is to keep spreading the word to others. And the parents know that it's important for their kids to be in the activity. Sometimes they don't know why. They don't have all those particular reasons. But, I'm sure Richard and Nola as directors, and when I was teaching in school, when a student comes back to you and tells you how much it meant to them to be in that particular program or that year or play that piece, whatever, those are the things that really mean the most. And I think for Music for All Bands of America, That's the thing. The people who keep coming back to it, the new voices and the new faces who come into it, they realize that. So I really hope for continued success and prosperity for this organization.
Nola, what would you like to see happen? Where do you want to see the organization go as we move forward into the next 50?
I mean, just to continue the trajectory of growth that's managed, music for all, and just making sure that we stay grounded in our philosophical underpinnings that have been student-centered and educationally centered, and making sure we don't deviate and get lost from that. And how do we amplify that? How do we keep moving forward? And the advocacy of arts education and the importance of music education, that we continue to be the gold standard for amplifying that. And I think our new CEO is positioned to do that. We're all very excited about that. And the board, there's not a better board anywhere helping make that decision. Our advisory council of band directors who lean toward that and help us with those decisions. As long as we're responsive and we can be nimble and we can take care of people, I think we'll continue to grow. That's what I hope. That's my fondest hope.
Yeah. Strict adherence to the mission and the vision. And I think that's what's gotten us to where we are today, that drive for excellence. Richard, I want you to be able to answer the question first, but in your role and the roles that you've had, there's so many more people that we can touch that aren't necessarily in the band too. Music making doesn't necessarily mean a clarinet in your face.
Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to see, Chuck. First of all, I'd love to see everyone work together so that we have the office really set up for success. The folks in the office right now are so overwhelmed, and I don't know how they do the job they do.
Yeah.
Everyone in the office is doing 20,000 things, and they're trying to get them all done today so that tomorrow is successful for kids, for directors, for communities, for anyone that works setting up any certain contest or any certain activity. So I hope that we can continue to help the office grow so we can take some pressure off those folks, because they just do an unbelievable job. And I don't know how they do it, to be honest.
Yeah. As someone who was part of that team for many years, I can recall many an event, not even Grand Nationals, some regionals where after the truck was packed up, long after the stadium has been emptied and we're still there working, there were a lot of tears shed at those events. There were just people simply exhausted.
The last thing I would guess is I want directors and judges to become one team, so that when you come to a show, you know that these judges that are going to evaluate you have your back, are not there as an opposing side, that we're working together to make music education better, and that we're all on the same team. And we're trying so hard on the judging side to make that happen. And we have so many directors that are starting to believe in that as well. And I think the more that we can get that to happen, the more folks we're going to get involved, the more trust we're going to have between directors and judges. And this is going to become, I don't know how this can become better than it already is, but I think it can become better.
Yeah. We got a lot of climbing to do still. I can't thank you all enough. Richard, Nola, John, you guys have been such an integral part of this organization, and your mark in history will show that, and I would like to think that you guys paved the path that other people will get to walk on, but they'll also pave their own path as well. So thank you for being a part of this and everything you've done for Bands of America. Thank you for being my friends. And it's been so fun interacting with you over the 35, 36 years of my attachment with the organization. And I'm sure we all wish the best for it for the future. So thanks again.
Thank you, Chuck.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Joining Us podcast. We are celebrating 50 years of Music for All and Bands of America. Do you have your own story or memory to share? Well, I want to hear it. You can record your own story by visiting musicforall.org/podcasts. We may just include your voice in a future episode. Hey, thanks to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor. And don't forget to make sure you're subscribed to the Music for All Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. I want to thank Ben and Laura from the team at Music for All for making this happen and lining up all of our guests. And of course, the way it sounds, that's the magic of our executive producer, Patrick Keller. I'm Chuck Henson. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week on Joining Us.
Joining us from Avon, Indiana.